Hi, everyone. My name is Peyton Lauderdale, and I want to welcome Natasha to the show today. She is a writer, she's a podcaster, she's a homeschooler, but I'm going to let her introduce herself and share a little bit more about who she is. And then, Natasha, if you would share your story after that.
Mhm. Thank you so much, Peyton, for inviting me to Gathering Hope. I'm honored to be here and to just chat with you on today. But a little bit about myself. You already kind of mentioned a little bit, but I'm a wife and mother. I wear many hats. An engineer turned homeschooler. I do
Wow.
some photography. And of course, I do writing and speaking and also a podcast host for rest and fun. I thought I'd throw that in there.
That's what you do for rest and fun is podcasting?
No.
Oh,
For rest and fun, I said I'll throw these in here so it's not like I'm like a workaholic or
I
something.
got it. Okay.
I have re-energized my love of painting. So I love to paint. Anything artsy, craftsy, that's me. And I love serving as a worship leader
Okay.
at my church. So I love worshiping God through song. And then I just love writing and I love coffee, like
Uh,
most.
you're speaking my
Yeah.
language. Like, if anyone ever needs to get me a gift, it's always like you can either buy me a mug or you can
Yeah.
buy me a coffee I haven't tried before or take me to coffee. Like I love coffee. We are
Oh
speaking the
gosh, we
same
share the
language.
same, yes, we have the same love language.
Yeah.
um, and today as far as my law story, it's very extensive.
Mhm.
But for today, I wanted to, and as we, continue to chat or whatever, some other stories may come up. But for today, I wanted to just kind of include, that I've experienced the devastating losses of multiple miscarriages,
Okay.
as well as a stillbirth. And and the stillbirth story is one I'd like to kind of share
Absolutely.
now. And and so it started with a checkup, like
Okay.
going to the doctors for my 7th month checkup. Everything up leading up to that point was totally normal,
Okay.
nothing abnormal. Had already had ultrasounds, in previous months, and everything was just healthy, thriving. Everything was perfectly fine. And so as we get to the doctor appointment, and the nurses check for the heartbeat, as they normally do, they've taken my weight, check my weight, check my blood pressure, all those things. And she's searching for a heartbeat, and it was just like, okay, we're just waiting for it because it was perfectly fine. Excuse
Mhm.
me, the previous month. And so we're still listening, and we don't hear anything, and like, okay, that's what's going on here. Maybe something is wrong with her equipment.
Sure.
And so
Is this just the nurse in there with you at that point?
just a nurse,
Okay.
and at that point. And so she leaves the room, and she comes back, and she applies some more some more jelly on my
Mhm.
belly, and so she's kind of pressing in, applying a little bit more pressure. It's like, they like to hide. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. And so she's checking again, and we still don't hear anything. And so she's like, okay, well, let me just I'll be right back. And she comes back in with still not a doctor, but another nurse. And I guess she has spoken with the doctor, and she was like, well, babies, they do like to hide, so we're going to send you over to the hospital to get an internal ultrasound. And I was like, okay. And at this point, I'm super, super nervous, like,
Sure.
what is really going on here? um
Is it just you at the appointment?
No, it's my husband and
He's
my
with
my
you.
ex my ex-husband
Okay.
and now, but yeah, my husband was there with me. And so we're both like really, really nervous with what was going on. So, so the doctor's office was maybe just a few blocks from the hospital. And so we went over to the hospital, and so and had the internal exam done, and still
Mm.
no heartbeat. And so the doctor came in, and oh gosh, I'm getting emotional. Sorry. um, the doctor came in and was like, well, the baby is, you know, the baby is dead, you know.
Is
And
that how they
so,
said it?
yeah, that's how they said it.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm so sorry, the baby is dead. And so we, because of how far along I was, it's like, we have to induce, and we'll have to induce you. So I didn't know what that, I mean, I knew what that meant, but I was like, I was just so like confused with everything that's going on. I'm like,
Right.
okay, I don't know. I felt like I didn't have a moment to really think clear about everything that was going on, because I was like, how is this possible? Like, how is it possible?
I don't think any of us can, like, we can't fully grasp what someone's telling us because
Yeah.
it just doesn't make any sense.
Right. Yeah. So it was so like, I just felt so confused. Like, what is going on? Just, I guess, and it's probably because of the previous month, or just everything leading up to it. I mean, even after this happened, when I had my oldest, my daughter,
Okay.
it was a high risk pregnancy or whatever. And so, maybe I could understand it better if, like, if I was spotting some, or if I
Right.
was crampy, or just something abnormal. But this pregnancy was so normal. And so it was so devastating in that vein, that like I had no signs that anything was wrong. And so I was really, really confused. And so when the doctor told me that, I was just so numb. I was like, I hear him, but I don't understand.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, we just started praying. I was just like, maybe he's wrong, and maybe, when we go through this procedure of inducing, and maybe, just maybe, a miracle will happen and I will
Yeah.
deliver a living baby. And that was really my prayer. And it was just so crazy. But and it's so weird, because now that I think about the comparison between this delivery and then the the birth of my daughter, like the next child that was born,
Okay.
like the room was so dark. And I was like, why
Was it?
yeah. So they had the room was just so dark. I just remember like a light in the corner of the room. And then just labor pains. And I'm like, this is maybe what hell feels like. Because
Yeah.
it's dark, and it's like, why am I in pain when the baby is not living? And so,
Yeah.
I mean, it was such a,
Were you induced that same day?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I was induced the same day. Um, and it was hours, like just hours of labor, like 6 to 7 hours of labor. And
There's nothing fair about it, and
right.
confused,
Yeah.
and like it seems like we should get to skip that part if we're not going to get
Yes.
to keep our baby.
Yeah. So yep, exactly. And that's how I felt. And I know, and I do remember one of the nurses saying, do you want more pain meds? Because,
Mhm.
you shouldn't have to feel anything. And I was like, absolutely, and
If there was ever a time to say yes to
mhm.
that.
Yep. Yep. Because I was still in some pain. I can't even remember. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Well, I can't remember if I got epidural or not, but I feel like I did. And then they just gave me more meds on top of it, because I was still feeling, the pain, labor pains. And so she gave me something, and it was like, basically took away all the pain. But my heart was crushed. Yeah. So after the baby was delivered, we were able to hold the baby for as long as we wanted to. And so, which is so crazy, because it was like a baby, you know,
Right.
you know, been that far along. Um, yeah, had all his fingers and toes. Um, but yeah, so we sat there for a little while, and then we gave him to the nurses.
It
Mhm.
kind of feels like this part of our story is really similar of like, so I have this baby.
Yeah.
He's passed away. What do you want me to do with him?
Yeah.
Like because he was my third baby. And, when you deliver a living baby, like there's like helping you latch and do you want to help wash the baby? And, I know some people do get that opportunity, but it's like, I'm not sure. Like, I need someone to tell me how to do this.
Yeah.
Like, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to hold him? I mean, of course I want to hold him, but what now? When do you make that decision to give your baby to the nurse? Like, how do we decide that? How did y'all decide that?
I think for me, it was more so an overcome of emotion. Yeah. And it was just like, here you go. Cause I was just so broken.
Yeah.
But exactly like you're saying, it's like, yeah. and I don't know, maybe they're not even really well trained, the hospital staff to, I don't know.
I think in some places it's getting better, but I would agree. I would agree. Yeah. What did you guys choose to do after? Did you have a boy or a girl?
It was a boy.
A boy. And what did y'all decide to do? A funeral? What was next for y'all?
Yeah, we didn't do a funeral. And thinking back, like I still don't know if that I would have. Yeah, we didn't do a funeral. Yeah, it was just, it was really hard. It was just more so like getting with family. Yeah. But even then it was still so hard because like people don't really understand it all.
No, they really don't unless they've been through it.
Right. Yeah.
We're all kind of lost.
Right.
And
then this,
go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, I was just going to say, and then this, to put in context, was 20 years ago.
Okay.
And so I feel
definitely not as trained as nurses are today.
Right. Yes. So that's what, I feel like it's like almost night and day, almost like just being in some groups now. And hearing some of the language or some of their experiences, and I'm like, God, I wish I had that then, or even someone to help me walk through it, or to, I don't know, make different choices, just from a standpoint of what to do after. Yeah.
I think that we have, organizations like ours, like we're constantly advocating for even more change for how to care for bereaved families, moms, especially, but that, the education of what happens in they're the first people to tell you, and that was why I was like, is that how they said it? Like, there's no good way to deliver that news. There just isn't. But like, it seems so like blunt.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we're constantly advocating for change, like I said, but there's still so much more to do, but we have come so far. We have come so far. After what do you think was the most surprising part of all of that?
Of which part? Of just
losing, of the experience of losing a baby, and even talk about your journey afterwards. Like what was next, in that journey. Let's talk about that first, and then we'll talk about maybe what was most surprising about the whole experience.
I think just just the stigma around child loss, infant loss, miscarriage, especially, well, I don't want to say during that time, but for me, it was, it wasn't really talked about.
Okay.
And so, I had, I remember my, family, of course, knew, and then like my coworkers. So I kind of received like some flowers or whatever, but that was it. Like nobody talked about it. Like,
Wow.
after um after that, like after being at the hospital, like, and so really for years, like I just stuffed it, like
Okay.
stuffed my feelings, emotions, just everything about it, really, almost as if it didn't happen. It's
Wow.
almost like as if I memory blocked it, to just
Wow.
kind of not deal with it at all. And that wasn't healthy.
I would agree. But tell me more about that part of
Yeah.
like why it wasn't, because I think we kind of know that grief will come out any
Yeah.
which way that it
Yeah.
can. What was that
Mhm.
like for you?
Yeah. It was super hard. Like, and maybe because in, my peer group, no one had experienced it. And so again, it was just more so the I don't want to say well wishes, but it was more so the sayings like, well, you can have more kids, and so it was just like a lot of people not understanding like how I felt, and so I didn't want to share because I felt like no one understood.
No one made it safe for you to talk.
Right. Yeah. And so really, and it's gonna sound like crazy, but it's really been the last few years, like meaning this happened 20 years ago, and the miscarriages happened before the stillbirth.
Okay.
And so it's really been in the last several years, that I really started to heal from that. And maybe it's because of the succession of losses that I've experienced that have really jarred me and made me
Mhm.
be like, okay, girl, you have got to start dealing with some of this stuff because it's
Because of
just,
the other losses you'd experienced in your life.
yes,
Okay.
yes. And so that's what has really kind of propelled me into, starting to, like, you can't deal with the things that we experience, the hard things like this, until we kind of acknowledge it, right? We have to
Yes.
acknowledge and say, this is really hurting me, or this is really affecting other areas in my life. Because really I was scared to really try to have a child after that. It's like
Yes.
I don't want to experience this, and it's nothing that tells me that this won't happen again. And so I
Yes.
had to deal with that portion as well. And so I don't think I didn't start trying till like 5 years later, because I,
Okay.
recognized like I have this fear, you know, um, of even, wanting to try, because I don't want this to happen again.
I mean, don't you think that like that seems like a logical feeling to have
Yes.
based on what you've already experienced? And I think like I don't know about you, but I think so many of us just kind of like beat ourselves up for having feelings that are normal and natural,
Mhm.
given that we have babies in heaven.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's absolutely. And the thing about it is, it's kind of, like we said, when we're feeling like we're walking alone, and we don't have anyone to kind of say, hey, that is normal. You're okay. That's normal. So then you're like, yeah, you think you're abnormal. You
right.
think that, it shouldn't be the case. And that's kind of how I walked through that particular season, because I really didn't have anyone telling me these things that are normal,
Right.
you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Isolation allows
Mm.
us to believe so many lies about
Yes.
ourselves, and
Good.
um, even just about it, not just about ourselves, but about like about other people, about the character of God. Like
Yeah.
I think having a community has been so essential to my healing. And I didn't even realize that's what I needed. Much like you, I felt like I got to be the only person this has ever happened to.
Mhm.
When in fact, statistics say it's completely untrue, but it
Yeah.
feels that way.
Mhm.
It feels that way. So, what is it that has helped you to heal? And not to say that you're fully healed,
Yeah.
but what are some of the steps that you've taken, or just what influences, um, have helped you to move forward in your healing journey?
Mhm. Um, as I was kind of mentioning, like my healing journey, it kind of came in bouts,
Okay.
kind of as I was able to kind of bring some things to the surface and allow the Lord to kind of help and heal those. But it really came through community.
Yeah.
Yeah. Surprisingly to me, but it has really come through community and really finding a safe place. And that has been the key word for just having a safe place to talk about it. And then it's come through my writing, as I share stories in community and through writing. And because sometimes I'm like, oh my God, as I'm writing, I'm like, God, all this, these things happen,
It just comes
yeah,
pouring out.
yep. But one thing, my personal hope, of course, is found in Jesus. And so that's where, it's really anchored there. And I wanted to share because when I say through community, I was a part of, it was like a business group, and it wasn't even like a spiritual group, but
Okay.
the head of it was, she knew Jesus and she talked about God, but the group itself was just talking about business. But this was a few years ago in this mentorship type program. We were instructed, she just said, I wanted to do a session about trauma release. And I'm like, oh my God, really? And so she had this trauma release exercise where you basically you go before God. She's just like, so in your quiet time, you just go before God and ask him, where was he when this happened? Where were you when this happened to me? And I did that. I kind of went before the Lord and was like, where were you when this happened and this happened and this happened or whatever? And the craziest thing is, like, God showed me every time where he was during those moments. And I was like, it blew my mind. And it was so crazy because it wasn't like a physical presence, but it was like, peace when I should have like really, really lost it,
Mhm.
and it was like he sent someone at the perfect time. Do you remember such came and it was just so
Wow.
many. It was so crazy. It was so crazy. But it was such a healing moment because, when we experience loss, especially, loss of our children, and just other losses in our life, we can really just be like, God, where were you? In this immense amount of pain that I'm feeling, where were you? And so that exercise kind of helped me so much. And
Just asking the
yeah,
Lord, and he
right.
revealed that to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Just mind blowing. But um I just keep finding myself going back to the word of God. And just again, when I say through community, it's communities like yours, communities like we have different groups at church that
Okay.
are really, really helpful. One that has helped me most is called Freedom. It's like a freedom group, and it really just deals with just different things from the past.
Okay.
Because a lot of mine hurt has been centered around loss.
Right.
I mean, in that particular group, we did like what we call life maps. And so
Okay.
you kind of map out your pain, your pain, like these big incidents in your
Yes.
life that has caused, different hurts or whatever. Basically through like childhood through your early 20s or so. Because what
That's a
happens,
lot.
I know, right? But what happens in that time frame really shapes like how you think, how you react to things, how you respond. And so if you can kind of see and kind of map that out, you can kind of understand a little bit better of like some of the thinking that you may have. It may be some wrong thinking that you have. And just a little bit of that is like when I mapped out mine, like you had all the incidences, and then you kind of rate the pain levels, and it was like my whole life was like, yeah, high level of pain, and I'm like, of course it is high level of pain, but one of the things, the thought trends that was kind of like a trend in my thinking was,
Mhm.
those who love me leave me. So that was one of the things that I found that was like a wrong thinking, but it was because of all the loss that I experienced.
Right.
And because it wasn't because the people wanted to leave, it's because they died or they were
Right.
murdered. I mean, just crazy, crazy, tragic stories, And so, but when you look at things like that, then you can understand like how you think, why you do the things you do,
Yes.
why are you responding, the fears you may have, you're scared that people might leave when it's really not the case. It's because of the trauma that you experienced. And I know I probably went on a
No,
tangent
I think
somewhere.
that's incredibly helpful for people to hear. I ask that question almost every episode, like, what's helped you? What has helped you to heal? And I think this is the first time I've ever heard of this exercise. And I know that like even just the simple act of asking God, where were you? And like even, journaling through that or praying through that. But this mapping out of like, this is why you do the things that you do. Um, and what's come on the other side of that? Like, so you map it out, but then what do you do with that information?
Mm-hmm.
What comes
So,
next?
yeah. So then you see like the wrong thinking, or I'll just say the lies that you're kind of telling yourself, because I'm telling myself this over and over. Oh, sorry. So I'm telling myself this over and over, and my default has come to, or people don't care. And so
Mm,
that's why I don't share, because I'm thinking people don't care, those who love me leave me, and so I'm like, that's wrong thinking. And so I go to the Bible to say, okay, what does God say, about this wrong thinking,
yeah.
about this point. And so getting some scripture from the word to combat the thought, or the mindset. And
Yeah.
so, and then just kind of meditating on that, and continue to walk that out.
Oh, I love that advice. It's, the word of God is one of the most powerful things that we have to combat uh, the trauma, honestly, that we've
Mm-hmm.
experienced, not
Mm-hmm.
just lies that we're believing, but
Yeah.
trauma. And what better person to understand trauma than Jesus?
Yeah.
Uh, so I think that's powerful. I want to ask what would you say to a mom who is brand new to this,
Mm-hmm.
given all that you've experienced? What is one thing that you think she needs to know?
So I jotted down more than one thing.
Tell us all of them then.
so so to me, the biggest thing is that the pain that you're experiencing is valid, So that is huge for me. Like, your grief is valid, your pain, your grief is normal. We know it's the normal response to grief, and though we know that we have to keep saying that, we have to
Yes.
keep telling people that your emotions are valid. Grief can we kind of talked about it already. Grief can really be expressed in an array of emotions. It can be anger, sadness, jealousy, outbursts, right? Quietness, just bouts of uncontrollable crying, really. Because sometimes I used to be like, am I crazy? Like, what's wrong with me? And I wasn't crazy.
Not at all. It's a human response.
Yeah. So just all natural and normal. And then even and I know, we can see this across social media, but even just the simultaneous emotions, like all of these emotions going on at the same time is normal. Right, the joy and gratitude at the same time. And then just making, for me, the huge thing has been making space for grief.
Okay.
And again, like I said, I used to just continuously stuff it all down or try to ignore it. But ignoring it does, I don't want to say prolong it, because it stays, but I feel like it keeps the intensity of the grief more present. And when we stuff it or ignore it. And so, but again, if it comes too heavy, I always say I don't mind taking a break from it if it becomes too heavy. And then and rest, because I don't feel like I just had the proper rest. It was kind of like,
what does rest look like for Natasha? Because like I suck at this. And I mean, like, even when I'm like, okay, today's going to be a rest day. And then I find myself like, but I need to be doing this, or I need to be doing that. And so what does rest look like for you?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to join you to say I suck at it too, but I'm working at it. Like, I am intentionally working
Isn't
on
that
it.
funny though? Like, think about that. Like, I'm working at resting.
That is hilarious. Yes. But the funny thing is, so I had a speaking engagement in last month, and it was on rest. And I was like, Laura, I needed to study on this and like really dig into this. And so I'm like, yeah, I'm convicted about it. So I'm like, I've got to rest. But the painting, like, for me, is rest, because rest in my mind, I guess before, it's just like you have to be napping, and it's not the case. It's really just taking a break from the norm of what you do, and taking time to do some things that you enjoy. And not that I don't enjoy, like photography or writing or stuff, but it's things that, like, you need to take a break from those type things to do things that you really, really enjoy and that really take your mind off the norm.
That's freeing for someone like me.
Right. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
And I don't have to be still.
Yeah.
That I can be doing something active, but also this is considered rest.
Yes. That was like, huge for me too.
Like, I think what you said was just doing something that is different from the norm and that you enjoy. Sometimes it's even hard to figure out what I enjoy, but yeah, I mean, this work, as you know, is like, it is so rewarding, but it's also so heavy sometimes.
Yeah.
And figuring out how to rest so that I'm more energized to do what I actually love to do has been difficult. So now we've turned this into a therapy session. And but I think what you've said is really, I wrote down the word freedom when you were talking, and it's really freeing, to know that, like, we don't have to be processing our grief 100% of the time. We have to do it, but we can take breaks.
Yeah.
I think that's
because I know, because I knew even part of the research that I have been doing surrounding grief. One of the things that I had came across was how, sometimes we fill up our life or whatever with distractions to distract us from the grief. And I was like, I know for sure I did this in college because one of my sisters passed away sophomore year in college, and I had like 3 jobs. I didn't need 3 jobs in college. I was like a full-time engineering student with 3 jobs.
Oh.
I know, like seriously, legit. I'm like, what? But and I realized, did I? Are you
You're
still
still
there?
here. You're
Oh
still
gosh,
here.
okay. I think you're hiding somewhere. Oh, there you go. Oh gosh, hold up. I'm like having issues. Okay. So I know did not need 3 jobs, engineering student, full-time student. And I realized after the fact, like I was just distracted from this crazy hurt that I had no idea how to process. No one knew how to process. And so, but what I learned through my research is that, distractions are okay. It's okay. It's okay for a time.
Yeah.
It's okay because if we, I like to call it a mercy.
Okay.
It's a mercy sometimes. Distractions can be a mercy because if we aren't in a place where we can really process the grief like in a healthy way, then it's a mercy. So it's okay sometimes to distract ourselves from the grief.
It's kind of like, I feel like grief is a both and, and I'm definitely not the first person to talk about this concept, but like you need rest and you need to process.
Yeah.
But in order to do that processing, you have to have like a safe person, a safe place, to do all those things. And so you're right. Like I remember being in counseling and I was really upset because I had gained so much weight after losing my son. And my counselor was like, okay, so for a time, are you waking up in the morning and like putting vodka in your orange juice? Well, no. Are you doing this, that, and the other? That would be really damaging to yourself. Well, no. And she was like, so can we, for a time, just buy ourselves some bigger clothes and realize like, this is temporary? Oh, I had never thought about that.
Wow.
That it could just be for a time. Now, obviously, this is something I am going to work on for the rest of my life. But at that moment in counseling, like I think that could be, you could insert whatever there, right? Like whatever distraction you need or a mercy. I love, love that word. Mercy that you ever, what you want to insert there for a time until you can go back to that safe place and move a little bit further.
Oh, I love that so much. I love it. I wish, and it's so crazy because you said that, that resonated with me. You said you were so mad with the weight that you gained.
Yeah.
And that was huge for me. Like it was so huge for me then. Cause I'm like, it was just so many things afterwards. It was like my milk coming in, the weight. It was so, I know I was straight up depressed.
Grief is the most fattening thing in the world.
Yeah.
But the biology of losing a baby, just that part is so hard.
Yeah.
The milk coming in.
Yeah.
I never expected that, but
Yeah.
I had just had a baby. Of course, my milk is going to come in. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard. Got anything else you would tell a mom? Your grief is valid. What did you need to hear? What did you need to hear at that time and didn't?
think just someone, and it's kind of like the theme of my book of someone just to sit with me,
Mm.
sit with me for however long I needed them to. And what that is meaning, like, if I needed to talk, someone that could just listen to me talk about it, and just to kind of walk alongside. Because I think about it, I think when people who are grieving, when they say they need someone, I think people think they have to have all the answers, or they have to have the right words to say, but it's really not that. It's really just someone who could just be there without, you don't have to have an opinion, any advice, really. It's really just someone that can really just sit with them, to someone that would listen to me without inserting an opinion or advice, or even having all the answers, really.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that may be why people are so resistant to walk alongside grieving people, because they feel ill-equipped.
That's good. Yeah.
One of the questions that I wanted to ask is, this interview serves as both like encouragement and hope for mom, but also to educate like the wider community about, breaking the stigma of pregnancy and infant loss. And I think what you just said is, like, I always ask, like, what do you think the wider community needs to know? And I think you just said it beautifully.
Yeah, I agree. And as well as to say, extending compassion, empathy, just because as my big saying now, and I don't even know, hopefully I'm the only person saying, I don't know, but it's like, I hope, it doesn't have to happen to you for you to care about it.
Yes.
I say it differently sometimes, but anyways, but that's the gist of it. It's like, don't let it have to happen to you for you to really care about it. So if we can just empathize with people who are hurting, so for people who are supporting people who are grieving, it's just like, can you just empathize with them? Can you show some compassion? Listen. Just, when you see someone hurting, it's not a time to insert an opinion or really advice. Love on them, listen to them, and then listen some more.
Yeah. Yeah. I was listening to a TikTok of all things this morning, and she was talking about boundaries. And she's like, this is one of my favorite things to say when I need to set a boundary with someone, is I'm not asking for feedback right now. Like, I want to express what I'm experiencing, but I'm not asking for your feedback. I just need you to listen. As my person, I need you to just, like you say, just sit with me.
Yeah. That's so good. I love that.
I know. I was like writing that one down. Not asking for feedback at this moment.
Yeah, that's so good. Wow.
Which, like, I don't know if you know, like, about the Enneagram. A lot of people do, some don't. I'm an Enneagram too. And so, like, to say something like that is like, ooh, but it's okay if you need to say something. Like, to say something like that and then just move on to something else, or just to sit in silence. I'm like, it's so hard. It's so hard because I feel like I've hurt you.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
Natasha, where have you seen hope through all of this?
I guess I can say, like, just in how I've changed,
Oh,
and
tell me more about that. I love that.
just become a stronger person. And I'm not the type of person that, I used to believe everything happens for a reason, but I'm not that anymore. It's more so I believe that all things do work together for the good of them who love the Lord and called according to his purpose, but not that everything has to be good.
Mm.
So everything doesn't have to be good, but he does use those everything to work into a pattern for good. And so I'm like, I see in myself how it has strengthened me. Would I've had chosen those different things
Right.
to give me strength? No. Um, and God did not do that to me, I believe, but it did happen. And so, but I know that I have grown stronger because of the loss. I know that, and I hate pain into purpose. I hate that little
Yes.
phrase, but it is true for me, that I believe God is allowing me to use the things that have happened to me to help other people. And then just being able to come alongside people to share hope, like, um, that you're not alone. And there's people like you, your wonderful organization, um, that can hold you by the hand and to come alongside you to share hope and to share love and to be loved on,
Yes.
and as we, I believe, are the hands and feet of Jesus, and to show and share Jesus with them, because to me he's our ultimate hope. Hope's name is Jesus. That's so.
Hope's name is Jesus. Oh, I love that. I can tell that this part of our conversation is one I'm going to rewind and write down, rewind and write down. You got so many powerful and helpful things to say. Speaking of things to say, you have a book that you're working on, right?
Yes,
So
books.
tell us a little bit about what your book is about, what inspired you to write it, and like what you hope people take away from it. That's a lot of questions all at once.
I
So,
know.
so share about your book and kind of how you got started with it.
Yeah. So thanks so much for asking about the book. Super excited about it. I turned in my manuscript last month. So
Nice.
yes, so it's on its way. It's in the editing process, but really what inspired was 2020 inspired the book.
So literally everyone needs to read the book.
Right. Exactly. Yes. And it's really because we I don't know, everyone is really experiencing some type of loss. And so 2020 inspired the book, because 2020 was super crazy, right? But
Yes.
really it was such a weighty heaviness of 2020. I don't know how to turn off those little dings, sorry. But there was such a weighty heaviness, with the start of the pandemic. It was like, the mass loss of life during that time, and then it was like the political divide on top of like the racial
Yes.
motivated, violence, racial injustice, church disunity. It was so dark. And so in my heart, I was like, oh my gosh, this feels so much like grief. Like
Yes.
I just kept saying, this feels like grief. And so I have written a couple of pieces that kind of express that. And then I actually wrote a piece that was called, Can You Just Sit With Me? And so the premise with that piece was me just expressing or experiencing so much pain and loss and just feeling the weight of the grief. But I really just wanted someone to just sit with me. Like, I don't, kind of like we were talking about before, like I really don't want opinions at this time.
Yeah.
I don't want, you to say, well, what about, I don't want that. I don't need that right now. I'm telling you that I am hurting. I'm
Yes.
hurting. I'm grieving. Can you just sit with me? can you just sit to listen, to understand, not to certain your opinion, your advice, but just to be there to show love, compassion, empathy, and just to think about what is needed. What do I need at this moment, you know? And
Yeah.
so that's really the premise of the book. But it kind of it discusses an array of loss, like person loss as well as non-person loss, like the loss of self, like your identity, um, from, you know, injustice. And then of course I share like a lot, like all of my loss stories in the book, and they're so real and raw. But I feel like so it'll be a book that has stories, but what I'm most excited about is that it's really informing, meaning it shares more of like I've done so much research, and so it has a lot of the whys and
Okay.
you know, why we grieve and how we grieve and what to do with all the pain.
Oh,
And
I
so
think that's good. What to
yeah,
do with it.
right, because it's like we hear a lot of stories, and I love stories because it helps to connect us and to
Yes.
say you're not alone. But what do you do with all the pain? And then just with the saying, like, time heals all pain, but what do I do about it now?
Yeah.
Like, time, future tense, yeah, like Jesus is gonna wipe out, one day he's gonna wipe all tears away, but what about today?
Yeah.
And
What do we
so
do while we
this
wait for that?
Yes, exactly. So I think the book kind of answers like what can we do right now to kind of help with what everything that's going on inside of us, So I'm so super excited about that, and just having again the informing part about it, and then the practical part, like this is some things that this is what I can do right now to help with the hurt and pain that I'm dealing with. So
I'm excited about that too.
yeah.
I want to be on the list to
Okay.
read.
I will put you on the list.
um, so you mentioned that you did a lot of research for your book. What have been some of the most helpful resources that you've employed to put this book together, and in just your personal healing?
Mm-hmm. Um, so a lot of the research is really like um, scientific or psychological type studies that were
Okay.
done with people who are grieving, and um, studies on death and dying. And so it was a lot of that type research.
Like academic research.
Yeah, a lot of academic research. And then as well as some, well, I guess that's still academic, but just research that has been done on the brain as relates to grief as well. And so I have the book, it's kind of in three parts. So it's kind of broken down in story, meaning
Okay.
so you'll have a lot of my story, or it starts with my story, and then it goes into some of the research, so you can kind of understand the why, like why am I feeling like this,
Mm-hmm.
and then the whys and hows of what's going on with the grief that you're feeling. And then it goes into the biblical aspect of it, because I got to bring Jesus into it. I mean, he is like ultimate healer. He is healer.
But he
And
made all
so
that science. So
yes, that's why I love it. That's why I'm so into it, because it's just like science really just proves Jesus to me,
yeah,
And so it's so interconnected, and that's how the book is kind of how it moves.
I love it.
Yeah, so I'm super excited about it, because it's like it's really saying, oh, really? That's why I feel like that, and then oh yeah, and then Jesus did, and so it's connected. You have the biblical applications to um kind of connected to why it's okay to grieve. Just that's like one of the chapters or something. And so it has the biblical connection and the biblical stories and groundwork to kind of ground you into it's okay to grieve, and this is why, that type of thing. But then there I have the exercises that are at the end that say this is what you can do right now to
Love
help.
that you give
And
people practical
yeah.
things to do. And I think that is going to be helpful for so many people. I love that you include like brain science into that. I really felt like, and still do, that when I experienced the loss of my son and how traumatic that was, I really feel like even now, my brain has never been the same. And I'm like, what happened here?
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like so much damage was done. And it's never been quite the same.
It's true.
But that last section of your book,
yes.
Only through the grace of God have I been able to like move through life at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited.
That's so good. That's like a good little summary of how the book flows. That's so good.
That's why I'm so pumped about your book.
Yeah. So awesome.
Thank you so much for sharing your story and just helping women to know that there's a resource coming that will help. What do I do while I wait? And just practical things, but most importantly, thank you for sharing about your babies with us, and I really appreciate that.
Yes, thank you so much, Peyton. I really enjoyed chatting with you today, and I just enjoyed this time with you. So
Me
thank
too.
you for inviting me.
Thank you.